Welcome back, campers, to another episode of Kerno Camps. Daniel, Dave the dog is off doing whatever Dave the dog does. So today I'm going to show you my tent, which is the Naturehike Mongar 2. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, you've probably seen it. It's been in most of them. But today I'm doing a long-term review of this tent. I've had it now on over 10 camps, so that's over 10 weeks. And spoiler alert,
I like it a lot.
I'm going to run through right now the exact specifications. I'll put them on screen in a minute. But the reason for that is because the specifications in my case have slightly changed. I've made a couple of modifications to the kit, and therefore I think it would be unfair to weigh it, measure it and so on and so forth. I don't normally carry it in its original packaging. Normally I will break it down so that I've got the tent outer in the original sack, the tent inner in its own sack, so stuffed sack, which I'll show you in a minute, and I carry the pegs, the foot mat and the poles separately within my backpack. But for the purposes of this review, it's all in. So what I'll do is I'll start to put it up and I'll talk about it as I go. So the sack that it comes in is quite versatile, quite strong, and when I've only got the tent outer, the fly sheet in it, it can compress down to about that big, and quite a lot here as well. So it's a very, very small package. All in all, this will fit into the bottom of my Van Gogh Sherpa backpack, into the footlocker section, apart from the poles which go into the main pack. So let's get it out. Now I have left the inner within the compression sack, the stuff sack that I normally use, so I'll put that one there. We also get the poles in their own little sack, and the sacks are made of the same material as the tent, which is 20D seal nylon. You get your pegs. I think you get 10 pegs in the original package. I've had to change a couple of the pegs out because over the course of the last few weeks at the very least, a few of them have bent, so I've replaced them with slightly longer, slightly stronger pegs. And we have the tent outer, and last of all in the pack is the foot mat, which does come with the tent as standard, so it's not a 20 quid extra purchase or any of that nonsense. It's already in there, which is something I believe that Naturehike do with most of their tents, which is fantastic. So we'll start out by getting out the foot mat. Foot mat is obviously the same size as the base of the tent. On the foot mat we have these metal retainers with some paracord attached to the end of them. Now when this foot mat is out on the floor, the poles stretch out and they get seated in the holes of the retainer clips. Now you don't have to peg out the foot mat when you're putting it up. It is a good idea to when it's a little bit breezy, and it is a little bit breezy today, so I'm going to get on and peg this out. Now the pegs that I'm going to use for pegging out the four corners are not the Naturehike original ones. I'm going to use slightly longer wide pegs, aluminium, a bit longer than the originals. I'll show you a comparison in a moment. I got these from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below. So compared to the Naturehike ones, they're not only wider than the originals, but they're also a good inch longer. I've got a lot more faith in the orange ones here rather than the red. So let's get this pegged out. So for this you need 4 pegs, one at each corner, just pegging roughly. Now this is a freestanding tent, and like I said, you don't necessarily need to actually peg out the foot mat. I am doing it purely because it's a little bit windy right now. But once you've got the poles in place, it's not going to go anywhere anyway. So the poles, I keep using the word poles as in plural, but really it's one complete piece. Now these are aircraft grade aluminium poles. And in these poles we have three main sections. We have what I refer to as the legs, or the Y piece of the pole. Each one of those goes into each corner. We then have the spine, which is the main part, which is the part that gives it its shape. And then we have the stretcher, which stretches out the sides of the tent. The doors give you a little bit more space inside. And at the other end we have the same Y piece. It is a symmetrical setup, so it doesn't matter which way round you go. I know that on some tents, if the front is slightly shorter or longer or whatever, they do colour code the poles, but there's none of that here because you don't need to know which end is which. So getting these in, very simple. Just clip it straight into the hole of each of the red retainers. Making this look far harder than it needs to do. There we go. So that's it. That's giving you the shape of the tent. Now this stretcher piece is actually meant to go on top, and it helps separate the fly sheet from the inner just that little bit more. I think it gives it about an extra, well, 3/4 of an inch to an inch. It's ideal. It is easy to make the mistake of doing it that way, so that the stretcher bar is underneath the spine. I've done that many times. It's a very simple affair to sort out. Now that I've got the pole in place, I'm going to pop these pegs out. Don't put them right now. The reason I'm going to do that is because I haven't found exactly where I want to pitch it. And that's another beautiful thing about this tent, is the fact that once you've got the poles into the foot mat, you can pick it up and move it around. You can even adjust it more once you've got the inner connected up. It is a freestanding tent, so what I like to do is get that shape done and then lie down so I can feel the floor. And that feels about right. Now, as I said, I've used this tent now on 10 or more camps, and this foot mat is still in very, very good condition. I've got no piercing, I've had no leaks, it's been fantastic. One of the good things about doing it this way is that you can feel the lumps in the ground, like we've got one there, but I'm alright straight up the middle. You can also feel for any sharp or lumpy bits of wood or stone and turf them away, so that they're not going to pierce your tent. There's another one, little stick. This ground is slightly lumpy and bumpy. I'm fine with that. By the time I've got the air mattress down, I'm not going to feel a thing. Now I generally leave pegging out for a minute. I'm happy with that, so now it's time to get the inner up. The great thing about this tent is that you can pitch it inner first or outer first. Wherever possible, for simplicity's sake, I like to pitch it inner first. But if it is pouring down with rain, it's a relatively simple affair to get it pitched outer first. There we go. So to attach the inner, first thing you do, grab another one of these retainer clips. red again, put it underneath the one for the foot mat. Do that on each corner. Very quick, very simple. Once that's done, it's time to start clipping the inner to the frame. It's very simple, very easy. Put them around the pole and twist. Again, this is a very quick, very simple process. Only takes a few moments, and you can reasonably have this tent pitched in far less than 10 minutes. Obviously I'm taking a little bit longer doing this right now for the sake of the camera. There we go, so that's that. Next thing, which is probably the only difficulty with this tent, is attaching these red retainer clips to this stretcher. Now, first thing I've noticed is that the stretcher has now gone underneath the spine, so I'm going to release these two, swing it round, job done, twist these back up into place. Oh, there we go. There. So with this, you're going to get one of these red clips, retainer clips, poke it through the end of the pole. That's easy. The difficult bit is you've got to do the same on the other side without this falling out, which 9 times out of 10 it does. What I find is if I put it on and then just hold it up as I walk around the tent, I can be a little bit rough, I can move it around, it's not going to break it. That way I've got hold of it, pull it down onto the other retainer clip. There we go, we've got the shape of the tent, everything's in place. Give it a quick visual check, make sure everything's going to be okay. Yes, it is, nice and easy. Now what you'll notice is this is a nearly all mesh inner tent. This thing is going to be rubbish when it comes to really bad weather, the deep of winter or even the cold of autumn and early spring. I don't think this tent would really be man enough for that. Of course it will deal with the wind, it will deal with the rain, but it's going to be cold. If I was going to use this tent in the winter, which I probably won't, then I will be inside a much thicker, chunkier, warmer sleeping bag, probably have an extra set of thermals on, maybe a fleece, gloves, hat, anything I can to stay a little bit warmer inside. But certainly for summer, late spring, early autumn, this tent is absolutely fine. It is a 2-season tent. I wouldn't want to stretch it past that really. Time for the outer. Now again, the outer is a very simple setup. First thing to do is find the door. They're quite easy because this Naturehike logo is on each of the door panels. Now where the Naturehike logo is blackest is actually the inside. What we want is this grey look to it on the outside. So with that in mind, catch some air and over it goes. Once you've got it into this position, just tidy it around a bit. And there we go. On each end is a vent which can be pegged open. It's got a little Velcro arm which attaches to the vent, pops it open. Don't need to worry about that just now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the middle. Now, you don't have to do this. This is purely for the sake of the review. But there is a couple of little ribbons here to tie off onto the cross beam of the spine and the stretcher. Now what I have found is that when I do that, I get a better shape of the tent. Not just there, but there's 2 more points, one on each of the cross sections for the Y ends. I like to do that now because it just gives the tent a much better shape. Next up, we can attach the same clips to the stretcher bar. So I'm going to go around the other side and do that. Now when you're attaching the second one, it can be a bit of a stretch. You do have to bend and pry the stretcher bar into place. I don't think there is any simple way to do that. I just find the more I force it down, the easier it goes into place. Right, so with that in mind, that's done. Now we can tie the fly to the frame here as well. Once that's done, again, the fly sheet has similar retainer clips. Pop them onto the bottom of the pole at each corner. And then we've got the fly sheet secured in place. Next job is to peg everything out. Now, down here on each corner, again it's freestanding, we can move it around quite freely. We have a bit of paracord attached to each sheet. One for the footprint, one for the inner. Peg that down. There we go. So that's the main shape of the tent. Next step to do is to get the doors out. You've got to be a little bit careful because we've got 2 bits of paracord here, one for each door of the tent, and we've got 2 more bits here for the zip. So what I like to do is just pull that back just ever so slightly, not enough to ruin the shape, and then bring both of the door pieces out, which generally you wouldn't do. Stretch that out, get it in position, and I take off one side of the door. And that's purely so that I can unzip and pop out the way. Now the zips on this tent aren't bad at all, but I have had a couple of snags. Not end of the world, it's easy to sort out, but it's a Chinese tent, it's Chinese zippers, there's no YKK stuff here, so you've got to expect a couple of snags. Now we do have a cover for the zip, which is really handy. Stops rain from resting on the zip all the way down. I'm going to get the other side pegged in. Right, with those pegged in, there's now one more peg out point on each end in the middle, and that'll give us the overall shape of the tent. There are 4 guy lines, one at each end, which I'm not going to bother putting out. It's not so windy that I'm afraid that I'll need them. They do give it a little bit more support in bad weather, but it's not that bad. Now one of the reasons why I've not weighed this tent is because I've made a couple of little additions. I don't know if you can see on the camera just here and here, I'll zoom in for that in a moment, but there are a couple of circles with a square patch behind them, same on that side as duplicated over there. The reason for that is because what I've done is I've put in a couple of magnets to hold the door open, and I'll show you why right now. Now the normal method to put a tent door up is to simply roll it and then use the toggle to hold it into place. And I don't like that because it flaps around, and quite often this toggle works its way loose. It's a very flaccid toggle. So I had the fantastic idea of attaching magnets so that instead of securing the door in the opening position this way, I could instead roll it up and secure it that way, which is great, but it doesn't work. Either the magnets are strong enough where I need to put in maybe 1 or another one there, and another one down here. I need to put in a couple more for that to work, but it was just an experiment, and in perfectly still weather it works fine. In a breeze like this, it takes nothing for it to roll down. So it means that we are stuck, or at least I am stuck for the most part, of securing my tent door in the open position with these toggles. Now what's funny, to me at least, is that securing them like that is all well and good. I'll open this one as well in a minute. It's all well and good with these flaccid toggles, but the problem that I can't, well, it's not a problem, what I can't fathom is why it is that these are so loose, yet the one for the inner mesh door is really tight and really fiddly. Getting mucked there for my last trip on Dartmoor. So on the inside we've got this D-shaped door, which again you secure by rolling this up. It's bonkers how tight and fiddly these toggles are. Now I've got arthritis. I really struggle to do this. To the point where occasionally it gets somewhat infuriating. There we go. Now what bugs me about this more than anything is the fact that, excuse me Dave, this down here is all just flapping around. I've seen a lot of tents with a little pocket just inside down here where the tent opens all the way up and around, just flip it down and fold it into the pocket, and I think that would be a massive upgrade for a future design of this tent. Other than that, no problems with the doors. Let me show you around a bit. So let's get a bit of a close-up here. So we've got 3 retainer clips, one underneath and then one smaller one here, and they all just attach to the pole, which then gets all staked out back here. One of the things that I forgot to show you is this little bit. Now what this is a little buckle that you can use to tighten this down around the pole, which I'm going to do in a minute. On each end of the tent we have a little arm which feels like it's got a bit of metal in there, and that attaches to a velcro patch on the inside, and that gives us a little bit of ventilation at either end. Guy ropes here which you can use to pull the tent out a bit more. So we've got your peg out point there, one on each corner and one on each door, and then on the other side of the tent we've got the same ventilation system as before, with a couple of guy ropes which I'll secure back in a minute out of the way. As you can see here, underneath here, got loads of space there, and that's great for ventilation, but when it comes to snow, really bad weather, I think that'd be piss poor. You need a skirt around it. So I can get my foot in there. Got a size 9.5 boot, and yeah, it's pretty much a size 9.5 boot gap there. So that's that. Here is my rubbish magnet design. That's supposed to attach there, and it doesn't really do the job. Now on the inside, oh, let me lie down. I am 5'10". Above my head this is not the most flattering view, but you can see all the bogies up my nose. So on the inside of the tent, above my head, I've got something in the pocket here. Right, we've got a pocket, and I've left a gap there of about a hand span. Down at the other end, my feet, I've probably got a good 6 to 8 inches with my boots on to the other end. I should have cleaned this tent out a bit more. I've got, look at that. Can you see that? Hate spiders. Daddy long legs don't really bother me though. Now up above is a gear loft, which you can remove if you want to save a little bit of weight, but I always leave it attached. It's there ready and waiting for me to use. We also have a hook from which to hang a lantern, and there are 2 pockets, one by your foot and one at the opposite end by your head. It's a 2-door tent, so you've got the one door just here, and on the other side another one. Now the doors open in opposite directions, so this one opens that way, and then on the opposite side this one opens the other way. You can see the ventilation there, and you can see the hub of the frame, the poles, and I've got it in this lovely green and white colour. So that's the Naturehike Monger 2, and here are the manufacturer specifications. So we've got the weight, the length, the width, the height, and all the hydrostatic head nonsense. Now what my important takeaway about this tent is that for its size and price, it's a good weight and a good pack size. Like I said, I can get the whole thing, excluding the poles, into the foot locker section of my Van Gogh Sherpa backpack. So far, like I said, it's been on with maybe 10 or more camps with me. I can't actually remember exactly, but it's at least 10 camps. I've never had any leaking. I've never had a problem with condensation. I've never had a problem where the zips are so stuck that I'm having a panic trying to get out of the tent. And on the whole, it's been fantastic. But what would I change? Well, there are a few things that I change. I've already mentioned the doors. I don't like the way the doors secure. I would like to see either 2 toggles on each door to make it that much tighter or that much more secure. The outer toggles I'd like to see shortened down just a tiny bit, a couple of millimeters, to give it more grip on that door. And the inside ones, maybe an extra millimeter of ribbon there so that it's easier for somebody like me with my crappy fingers can tie it back. Either that, or I'd like a complete redesign of the inner door into the full zip around design so that you can then roll it all back and place it into a pocket out of the way, and that negates the reason the need to have any kind of toggles there at all. I think that's definitely the way to go on a future revision of this tent. Problems that I've had with this tent are usually during high wind because of the massive gap between the inner and the floor. I would like to see that narrowed down from a size 9.5 boot to maybe a size 5. It's not great in that scenario. When it comes to high winds, it will stand up, don't get me wrong. It's never going to fall down on you, it's never going to rip or anything like that, I don't believe, or it hasn't on me yet. But it makes it very, very breezy inside the tent. And if it's breezy, windy inside the tent, that means it's cold. Anything else that I'd like? No, not really. The tent for me has been fantastic. But one real problem, and that was one of the poles bent during high wind. and that was because I did not secure it at either end with the inner tie down points for the fly to the poles, which meant that the tent was not in a good shape. It wasn't square when I erected it. So yeah, one of the poles bent ever so slightly. It was noticeable only to me when I packed the poles away, and they weren't all lined up properly. That was easily sorted. Untied the elastic from one end, took the section of pole out, filled it with sand, and then bent it back into shape in a vise. It's fine. Put it all back together, no problems ever since. And since then, I've been making sure that I tie it down with those inner ties properly each and every time. So for the money, I think I paid £159. I think that was the price. Sounds about right. I think it's about £159 for the money. Was it worth it? To me, yes. It's been a brilliant tent. The only reason that I would change it now is for a 4-season tent that's going to get me through the winter. I will be using this tent again next season in the summer, in the late spring and into the summer and into autumn, and I would quite happily recommend this tent time and time again to other campers. I have seen this tent on Amazon drop down as low as £80, so it's worth looking, because sometimes you can get it in absolute steal. The fact that you get the footprint with the tent as standard is brilliant, and I don't understand why all manufacturers don't do that anyway. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. This has been Daniel, and Davey's off there again now. And this is the Naturehike Mongar 2. Link to the Amazon listing is in the description below. If you choose to use that link to purchase it, I do get a little bit of a kickback, and that'd be fantastic. Thanks. Yeah. So if you'd like this review and you want to see more reviews from me, then please let me know. Give me a like, and I will very much appreciate it. You take care, and I'll see you next time.